While Gregorios was fighting in the east, Anna was working to stabilize the political situation in Constantinople. The stress of the past few years had taken their toll on Emperor Alexios. He couldn't even speak normally after his stroke. He spent many of his days alone in his chambers, mourning the death of his wife and feeling saddened about his failures. Alexios gradually retreated from the responsibility of governance, allowing Anna to take over many of his duties. She was all too eager to do this, and began ruling the empire on her father's behalf. Consequently, Alexios' bodyguards, the Norman Guard, began to follow Anna around Constantinople, as if she were an empress. The Norman Guard swiftly developed a large amount of loyalty to Anna as she navigated her way through imperial politics. Anna quickly formed an alliance with Patriarch Valentinos, using the influence of his Orthodox militants to enforce the rule of law on the streets of Constantinople. Through this alliance, Anna's husband, Bryennios the Younger, was made the governor of Hellas. He became a staunch supporter of Valentinos. Anna and Valentinos frequently held large dinners with all of their political allies, signifying the Patriarch's newfound dominance over the imperial court. At one of these dinners, Valentinos introduced Anna to Carolus, the Orthodox zealot who had previously served under General Lucas. A young child stood next to Carolus. He was named Manuel Lepida. Carolus explained that he was training Manuel so that in the future he could serve as the sword of the Patriarch. Carolus spoke of how Manuel was a genius in history, science, and theology, and a martial arts prodigy. Anna remarked that this reminded her of her brother Gregorios when he was young, and that she saw a bright future for the young Manuel. But in the present, new problems were arising for Anna in Constantinople. Her promotion of Orthodox militants throughout Constantinople put her at odds with David, the aging captain of the city guard. Many Catholic senators were also angry with Anna, feeling that they had been cut out of important decision-making. Naturally, David and these Catholic senators entered into an informal alliance. Early into the year of 1114, news reached Constantinople of Gregorios' disastrous war in the east. David quickly fell into a state of depression upon hearing of what happened to his son, Isaac. But having spent a lot of time around Gregorios before the Eastern War, David was well aware of Gregorios' obsession with leading an invasion of Italy. During his ramblings, David revealed this to the Catholic senators, who wrote a letter to Gregorios, urging him to return to Constantinople if he wanted to invade Italy. Gregorios at this time was spending his days resting in Armenia. He partied with farmers in many villages, often helping them with their daily lives on the farm. The Varangians followed Gregorios the entire time, and he became good friends with a new captain of the Varangian Guard, a man named Wilfred. Gregorios often took the Varangian Guard to fight bandits in the countryside. In one incident, a bandit cut Gregorios' face, permanently scarring him. Wilfred and the other Varangians managed to jump in and save Gregorios. This incident enraged Gregorios, and that night he decided to burn alive the captured bandits. He cruelly tortured any more who he found over the following days. Many people began to spread stories that Gregorios was sadistic. During this time, Gregorios began delving heavily into philosophy. He frequently had debates with Armenian clergymen, who he developed a huge amount of respect for. Gregorios began to view the politics of the empire as trivial and petty, and preferred his wild life in the Armenian countryside. But when the letter from the Catholic senators reached him, a fire was reignited in Gregorios' heart. His desire to invade Italy, destroy the Knights of Adana, and avenge his mentor Alfred all suddenly returned. By summer 1114, Gregorios said farewell to his friends in Armenia, and began the journey back to Constantinople, arriving there by autumn. He was thrilled to be reunited with his wife, Peroska, who is now known as Irene. And he was ecstatic to see his young son, Alfracos, who had grown considerably since Gregorios had last seen him. The boy was now 4 years old. Almost immediately, Gregorios' presence in Constantinople caused tensions to boil up. Many people still hated the Varangians for the assassination of General Lukas, and Orthodox mobs constantly followed Gregorios and the Varangians. To try and enforce the peace, Anna ordered Gregorios to send the Varangians out of the city. Gregorios refused, saying he did not recognize Anna's authority over him. After this, Anna decided to send the Norman guards to escort the Varangians in order to prevent violence from breaking out. But the Varangians despised the Norman guards, and it did not take long for a fight to break out between them. David and a large contingent of city guards arrived on the scene to break up the fight and escort Gregorios through an angry crowd. Gregorios persevered. To win back the support of the people, he held a massive celebration outside the Hippodrome. At this party, he told exaggerated stories of his adventures in the East, characterizing himself as a hero and Isaac as a martyr. He had many conversations with commoners from throughout the city, learning of how the conflict between Orthodox and Catholic militants had ruined many lives in the city. Public opinion again slowly started to swing back in favor of Gregorios. He decided to make it his mission to help the poor in Constantinople. Gregorios then decided to barge in on a Senate meeting and demand that the government hand out a huge sum of money in order to lift the city's slums out of poverty. This made Gregorios wildly popular within Constantinople. Gregorios became overconfident. He gave a speech where he openly mocked Patriarch Valentinos and referred to his sister as an illegitimate ruler. Gregorios went on to slander several government officials who he viewed as corrupt in front of the Senate. He demonstrated that he was more than willing to break any political precedent in his quest for power and influence. He promised that once he became emperor, he would be the second Romanos, be an emperor of the people, and restore the empire to its ancient glory. Gregorios would not have to wait long. Alexios' health was failing him. By the spring of 1115, he rarely left his bedroom, being constantly bedridden and in a state of distress. The emperor's health continued to worsen. By the summer of 1115, he had fallen gravely ill, and even had a second stroke. He feared that his children would be at each other's throats if he died, and it was this fear that kept Alexios alive for another entire year. But by 1116, Alexios could not hold on any longer, passing away in his sleep. Anna and Valentinos quickly met to discuss what to do. They knew that Gregorios would pose a serious threat to their power once he became emperor. Valentinos wanted to have Gregorios killed, but Anna refused to allow that to happen. Anna talked about how it was well known that Gregorios decided to lead an invasion force into Italy. The empire's situation in Italy was deteriorating rapidly. If they supported Gregorios' invasion plans, he would be out of Constantinople for years, during which time Anna and Valentinos could consolidate their power. Once Gregorios returned home, he would be nothing more than a puppet. The two agreed on this plan. They decided to mend their relationship with Gregorios, and then support his coronation as emperor. A few days later, Anna gave birth to a son, who she named Isaacos, in order to appease her brother. She then began to arrange her brother's coronation. Only a few weeks after Alexios' death, Gregorios was crowned as the new emperor of the Romans. Not long after Gregorios' coronation as emperor, the situation in Italy began to escalate. Anti-Pope Clement had long since passed away. The Holy Roman Emperor, Henry V, appointed a successor named Sylvester. Sylvester promised the Knights of Adana that he would finally embark on their long-awaited war of vengeance against Rome. The Knights then elected Sylvester as the new Grand Master of their order, creating an unbreakable alliance between the Holy Roman Empire and the Knights of Adana. Sylvester hoped to use the coming war to seize control of the papacy and become the undisputed ruler of the Catholic Church. He wanted to march on Rome. Throughout the decade, he began assembling an alliance of Italian cities to launch an offensive against the Roman Empire. Emperor Henry even sent a detachment of German soldiers to support him. Now, in 1115, Sylvester's army numbered more than 20,000 men, a huge force. They launched an attack on the city of Ancona, which had refused to join the Adonan alliance. Pope Pascal managed to convince the Roman governors of Italy to pull their provincial armies together and come to the support of Ancona. The Romans managed to put together a small force of just a few thousand men, which was led by General Nicholas, who was the current governor of Apulia. Nicholas had no idea just how large of an army the Knights of Adana had assembled outside Ancona. An Adonan army, led by the order's second-in-command, a knight named Pagani, intercepted the Roman army near the small town of Pescara. Nicholas felt confident in victory, despite knowing he was slightly outnumbered. The Roman army was made up of several thousand local Italian spearmen, as well as a great number of professional Roman archers trained in the imperial heartland of Asia. In addition, Nicholas commanded several hundred horsemen raised from Apulia, equipped with money from the provincial treasury. But these men were ill-trained and inexperienced, having never been sent into a battle before. The Battle of Pescara began with both armies advancing towards the center of the battlefield. A fierce melee erupted between the Romans and the mixed German and Italian spearmen commanded by the Adonans. A large amount of knights, led by Pagani, managed to rout the Roman cavalry. Before long, the Knights of Adana obliterated the entire Roman army, even killing General Nicholas. Once this news reached Constantinople, Gregorios immediately seized on the opportunity. He went to the Senate to announce that he would seek a war with the Knights of Adana and the Holy Roman Empire. He proclaimed that the goal of this war would not just be vengeance for the defeat at Pescara, but the complete destruction of the Knights of Adana and the conquest of Italy. To Gregorios' surprise, the Senate unanimously agreed with his aims. Even the Orthodox senators who traditionally hated him promised to give the emperor support. Preparations for the war in Italy began. Gregorios ordered the mobilization of soldiers from many of the empire's provinces, having them rally at the city of Dyrrhachium. To his amazement, the Orthodox governors of the European provinces, who were the traditional allies of the Patriarch, went above and beyond in recruiting new soldiers for the campaign. Bryennios alone brought almost 7,000 of his soldiers to Dyrrhachium. Gregorios named Bryennios as his domestic of the schools, making Bryennios the emperor's second-in-command. The commander of the Varangian Guard, Wilfred, used the time to refill the ranks of the Varangian Guard, vastly supplementing the Roman army. By the year 1117, nearly 30,000 Roman soldiers were assembled outside Dyrrhachium. They came from nearly every province in the empire. Many of these men were veterans of General Lucas, and still harbored resentment over his death. Carolo served as one of Gregorios' top commanders, introducing the emperor to the now 16-year-old Manuel. Manuel impressed Gregorios with his unrivaled knowledge on military history, theology, siege warfare, and the cultures of all the different groups surrounding the empire. Manuel reminded Gregorios of a younger version of himself. Gregorios then promoted Manuel to a high-ranking position in the army, promising that Manuel would have a bright future ahead of him. At the end of 1117, the invasion was ready to begin. All the Romans needed now was to wait for the good spring weather. Gregorios sent a letter to David in Constantinople, asking that David take care of his son Alfracos if the war lasted many years. Gregorios wanted his son to be trained as a leader, just as he had. With that settled, in early 1118, the invasion of Italy was ready to begin. Gregorios' armada took off from Dyrrhachium, heading to the Roman provinces in southern Italy.